David Axelrod has been called Obama's media maven by The Nation, a believer and pillar of the community by former DNC chair and friend Daniel Wilhelm, a fan, an optimist by the Washington Post, axe by the 20-something staffers he relies on and leads at the White House, and dad by Michael Axelrod, Beloit College class of 2005, and by his boss, our president, Barack Obama, his partner with me every step of the way. In fact, he is such an important partner that the latest issue of Business Week reported nobody else has his political savvy and personal relationship with Obama. The part of his career he is most proud of, his sister Joan told the Washington Post in 2009, the part of his career he is most proud of is his real commitment to politicians who he believes can make a difference. The former journalist at the Chicago Tribune reportedly says he's currently, quote, on assignment in Washington, as if still reporting from a news desk. But today, he is back at Beloit with his family and not far from home. We are glad to have you here and eager to hear from you. It is my honor to present David Axelrod, Senior Advisor to President Barack Obama, who will deliver the address to the graduates of the class of 2010.
Thank you, President Bierman. It's obvious that despite your admiration for turtles, you have no trouble coming out of your shell. So I see that. And I have to tell you, having worked in Washington for a year and a half, I'm accustomed to laughing at economists. So it's, I feel very comfortable. I did have a whole speech built around Caddyshack, and now I'm going to have to improvise. But I want to thank the Board of Trustees and the faculty. Thank you to the class officers who invited me to participate in this special day. Congratulations to all the parents and family and friends who've traveled from near and far, and most especially, congratulations to the class of 2010, who, by the way, have the most creative cap design of any graduating class that I have come across. I also want to wish all the moms in the audience a very happy Mother's Day. Needless to say, none of us would be here without our moms. I know you are so very proud to see your sons or daughters achieve this great milestone today, and some of you may be like my mom, who was just a little bit amazed as well. There's no need to identify yourselves. You know who you are. Graduates, you could not have given your moms a greater gift today, and as you begin to pay off your student loans, you'll realize you will not have ever give her a more expensive one either. But you can be sure that the usual flowers and scarves or jewelry just would not have elicited the same tears that she'll shed today. So one more time, let's have about a hand for all the moms in the audience. Someone told me long ago that to get a sure applause line at the top of any speech, so what could be better than moms? And just to be clear and politically correct, I know that there are a lot of dads with tears in their eyes today too, because it wasn't too long ago that I was one of them. I sat in those chairs in this very audience. I must say it was a much colder day than it is today, but we didn't have the cooperation of the board to produce such a beautiful day. I sat here with moist eyes 5 years ago when my son Michael became a Beloit graduate. And just for the record, I also sobbed 4 years earlier when I dropped him off at Beloit for the first time and returned home to his empty room and realized that he probably would never live with us again unless he couldn't find a job, which was not much comfort. I'm supposed to be a hard-bitten political warrior, so please keep my confessions to yourself. The point, though, is that these passages, these watershed moments in our lives are emotional for everyone involved. As a parent, you're filled with pride. But if you're like I was, you're also wondering, what happened to the little boy I carried on my shoulders? It wasn't just yesterday we dropped him off for freshman orientation, a wide-eyed kid filled with anxiety. Who are these confident young men and women striding across the stage? Where did the time go? I blinked, and he was all grown up, and it tugs at your heart. I also know it's a bittersweet day for the graduates as well. On the one hand, it's one of the great occasions in your lives, the culmination of years of effort and achievement. In the immortal words of one of my bosses at the White House, this is a big freaking deal. or something like that. On the other hand, it's also a day for painful goodbyes to friends, faculty, and this warm and embracing Beloit College community. I remember my heart aching for my son as we packed up the car and drove away, his college days receding in the rearview mirror. So it's a great day, but it's also a tough day. And I know, class of 2010, that as you leave here today with your newly minted degrees and friendships and experiences you'll cherish for a lifetime, as this important chapter of your life recedes into the rearview mirror, it's natural to wonder, what's next? What should I do now? What will my future be? For the first 21 or 22 years of your lives, your paths were largely plotted out for you. But now it's up to you to chart your own course, which is exhilarating and more than a little frightening, I'm sure. I know that some of you have already made plans. You've landed a job which isn't easy in an economy that's just pulling out of a horrific tailspin, and nobody knows that more than people who live in the greater Beloit area. Or you've decided to take your education to the next level. Either way, good for you. Go for it, full throttle. But I'm also sure that many of you are still thinking, still searching, still wondering what that next chapter might be. And I want you to know that's okay too. You're probably getting a lot of advice to find a job that pays well or lends some sense of stability. You may be feeling a little pressure and anxiety as if you're somehow falling behind each day that you wait to plot out your entire life. Well, here's my 2 cents. Reject that advice. Resist that pressure. Embrace the glorious fact that as you march out of here today and into the future, you are as mobile and unfettered and as free as you'll ever be to try things out, to find your passion, to chase your dreams. Don't even try to plot out where you'll be in 30 years because there's no way to know. That's truer today than ever. The changing nature of our economy over the past couple of decades means the traditional career path my parents knew, the starter job, the ladder climbing, the gold watch when you retire, that path is now largely defunct. Many of you will experience multiple careers, perhaps even before you're 30. Of course, you have the responsibility to support yourselves and someday perhaps families, and the degree you've earned today will help you lead a more comfortable life, but that's no guarantee of a happy and fulfilled life. I have grown from young to old, or at least older. I'm giving myself the benefit of the doubt. In an age when a pervasive sense of idealism gave way to a numbing chase for things. Everywhere you look today, you're told that happiness somehow is measured by whether your home has a 3-car garage, or your phone is a 4G, or your TV is a 3D, or even an HD. The economic crisis from which we're still recovering was surely a failure of our institutions and some who ran them. But it also was the product of the misplaced value as millions of Americans bought more house than they could afford and ran up credit cards and home equity loans to be the first on their block to own the latest and greatest things money can buy. So as you set out on this next chapter, I urge you to pursue your passions, to chase your dreams, to seek the things that will fill your heart and soul and not just your bank account. Now I know what you're thinking. It's easy for you to say, man, you work at the White House. You've made it, and that's a fair point. But I assure you that the day I walked across the stage at my graduation sometime back in the Pleistocene age, the last thing I imagined was that I'd ever have an office in the West Wing. And I suspect it was the last thing my professors imagined as well. I didn't have any connections or money. My father passed away when I was young. I was on my own. I had no plan that would lead to this point. But what I had was a deep interest in the world around me, in politics and writing. So even while I was still in college, I took some time off, went home to New York City, knocked on 75 or so doors until I landed a job at a little community newspaper so down on its luck that they probably would have hired any eager soul who was willing to work for the $50 a week they could afford to pay. When I returned to school in Chicago, I parlayed that into another community newspaper job, and then used my mounting stack of clips to get an internship that became a full-time job at the Chicago Tribune. And that was where my real education began. As a young reporter, I was underpaid and overworked and loved every minute of it. I would have put in 25 hours a day if I could. I spent 2 years working around the clock, covering all manner of murder, mayhem, and maniacs, many of whom were actually elected officials, but that's a different story. But by the mid-1980s, journalism was changing. The businessmen began to take over the newsroom. The emphasis swung from veracity to velocity, from reporting to receipts. Belt-tightening squeezed out the passion. And just then I was presented with a new opportunity, a new career. You see, in these volatile first years, no matter how well you think you have your life plotted out, it tends to veer towards the unexpected. And that can be a good thing. You should understand that. So I'm not suggesting that you don't write out those 5-year plans like you're told to. I'm just suggesting to do it in pencil. I say this because right around then, a politician I greatly admired, some of you may remember, named Paul Simon, asked me to join his campaign for the United States Senate. All I'd have to do was give up a great title, a steady column I'd earned, and a bright future at the Tribune. And I said yes. One of my editors told me I'd destroyed my career. My friends told me I was nuts. My mother wouldn't speak to me. But my heart told me it was time to chase new dreams. I ended up the campaign manager overseeing a 20-something staff that included a young guy named Rahm Emanuel, who would not have said that big freaking thing, deal thing the same way I did. And together we helped our candidate win a victory few thought possible. I so enjoyed that with a friend from the campaign, I decided to open a campaign media consulting firm, which was an audacious idea considering that neither of us had ever made an ad, and that as a young father I was financially more desperate than I was when I was looking for my first job. My wife Susan, who's here today, and I had no money, and 2 young kids, one with a severe chronic illness that required frequent hospitalization and created some chaos in our lives. We didn't know if we'd make it or not. But she encouraged me like the saint that she is, and we leveraged everything we had on that crazy dream. Over time, we won some races and we won some causes, but we lost some too. I've worked for mayors, governors, congressmen, senators, and now a president I deeply admire. I've gotten to see how politics and government work, and sometimes how they don't work from the outside and the inside. It's been a journey filled with wonderful relationships and rich learning. And here's the wildest part, the part I never anticipated. It turned out to be a pretty good living, too. You see, chasing your passion doesn't necessarily mean you take a vow of poverty. I've worked hard all my life, but I've never called what I do a job. I've never gone to work grudgingly because I am passionate about my work. But along the way, I learned something else. As rewarding as work like that can be, it's no substitute for friendships and family and the unconditional love they bring. These are the things no job can offer. That's the second point I want to make. Don't get so swept up in your trajectory that you break free from your anchors. Don't focus so heavily on making a living that you forget to make a life. My career path and my family life ran up against one another in 1992 when I received a call from Bill Clinton's campaign manager with a heady offer. He asked me to be the campaign communication director at a time when the nomination was already almost certain. It was, for me, the dream job. But by then, Susan and I had 3 kids, and our daughter was still coping with her illness. Susan would have stood with me no matter what, I think, but I remembered something she told me as I started my firm, and that was, don't be the one who misses out on your kids growing up. Don't be that one. That recollection made the choice surprisingly easy. I said no. I said no to a job that promised a very bright future, because when I weighed it against what was most important to me, it wasn't even a close call. The one thing you can always count on, the only thing, is the love of your friends and family. Whether you win or lose, rise or fall, succeed or fail, and we all fail at one time or another, Family and friends are our home base. That's what's most sustaining. So even as you seek your passion, leave time and room for those precious relationships. Keep time for your family. Hold tightly to the friends you've made. They'll guide you through the next step in your journey and beyond. And when you find that balance between a living and making a life, you will be very rich. No matter how much money you have in the bank, you'll be happy whether you're a celebrity or merely one in your own circle. My parting thought is this. That was my other applause line, but my parting thought is this. Thank you. Whatever you choose to do with your life, don't withdraw from your obligations to the larger community or lose faith that each of us has the power to change the world in ways small and large. Because in the end, I believe the greatest long-term challenge we face as a country isn't the economy, as difficult as turning around the economy has been. It isn't the specter of war and terrorism or climate change, as pressing as those are. It isn't the deficit or division, as tricky as those can be. It's the growing cynicism that turns good people away from the public square, that cedes the decisions that will shape our future to cable bloviators, powerful interests, and short-sighted politicians. Robert Kennedy, who is one of my heroes, said, "The future's not a gift, it's an achievement. Every generation helps make its own future. This is the essential challenge of the present." This magnificent college is a great reflection of that truth. In the middle of the 19th century, a small group of pioneers from the East settled here and resolved that for the community to take root and thrive and grow, it needed a college. So they petitioned the territorial authorities, raised the necessary funds, and Beloit College was born. Think of the difference the vision, commitment, and sacrifice of that little band of pioneers has made in so many lives, including your own. So as you look at the world around you, don't just accept the future you get. You have the power and responsibility to help shape it. And as dispiriting as our politics sometimes can be, what I've seen in you gives me hope, because your generation refuses to succumb to that cynicism. You volunteer in more ways and higher numbers than ever before. You engage in new and exciting ways that most of us don't understand unless we have a 25-year-old assistant who can explain it. You're anxious for us to get out of the way so you can heal our politics, our people, our planet. That idealism isn't limited to party or ideology. In fact, it's often apolitical. But my experience with it over 2 years of campaigning in every corner of this country moves me deeply. It was you, it was people your age who built a movement, house by house, block by block, town by town. It was people your age who toiled from dawn to past midnight, worked for free, gave up good jobs to help. It was people your age who possessed an enthusiastic idealism, the likes of which I hadn't seen in American politics for 40 years. When pundits and pollsters and cynics and skeptics said Barack Obama couldn't possibly win, it was people your age who said, yes, we can. In fact, you made it possible for me to be the commencement speaker today, so you have nobody to blame but yourselves. It was people your age who changed the world just as it always has been. So in closing, I'll just say that we will do our best to hand it off to you in good shape. All I ask is that you keep doing what you're doing, keep inspiring us right now, today more than ever. Hold our feet to the fire, commit your hands to restoring the public faith, because before long it will be the public's faith in you. That's how you'll all be measured, as graduates of this institution, as citizens of this nation, as representatives of this entire generation, by the future you make. So make us proud, class of 2010. Congratulations. I wish you all the happiness and hope in the world.